did kind of want to have everybody tell me who they are, though, so that I know which parts of the states you're from and what agencies you're from. So if we could just do that real quick. Roger, you're on mute. And now I hear what you're saying.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Maureen, why don't you go ahead and then just pick somebody else?
Okay. I'm Maureen Burning. I've been working with Roger for a million years, and I have my own training company, butterflyttt.com, and we do well, right now our main focus is the strong teaching and strengthening families protective factor framework to parents and professionals. That's the book of lesson plans that we have that focus on strengthening families. And I will call on Audra.
Hi, this is Audra. I'm with the Meridian Library District. I live in Boise, but work in Meridian. And I'm the outreach manager for almost everything that we do is outside the library. And for the past 5 or so years, I've been working with reentry classes out of IDOC in the area south of town, as well as with the Ada County jail system.
Pick somebody.
Sydney has a camera today.
Yes, I do. Exciting. Yeah, so my name is Sydney Schuldnecht. I'm the AmeriCorps Vista leader at United Way of North Idaho.
Yes. Yes, you are.
And so one of the projects that I oversee is the Hope Conquers ACES Vista project at UWNI, which has merged with the CDA for Kids program at Coeur d'Alene School District. And while the volunteer hasn't started yet, I wanted to just be tapped in and aware of the work that you guys are doing. Also, for like personal interest, I am hoping to go to school for my master's in social work. So these types of topics are always interesting to me. So, yes.
Good. Pick somebody else.
And I'll choose my fellow SS Savannah Fletcher.
I'm Savannah. I am with the Idaho Youth Ranch. I oversee all of the front end, kind of the outreach coordination and the intake coordination down in the Boise area. And I'm also a part of a juvenile justice coalition and as well as the Idaho Project and a couple of projects in the area. So as much as information as I can get about programs that are connecting people to services. And then let's go with Cheryl.
I never get a chance to listen, so
Cheryl, you were mute. You were muted. So you want to start over? Now you're muted again. Go ahead.
Is it unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Okay. I'm a board member of the Children's Trust Fund, and Roger sends these notices out all the time, and I put them on my calendar and never seem to have a chance to call in and listen. So hopefully I can hear all of it today, and so I'm interested to hear what's being said.
Perfect.
Richard.
Richard, you're on. Go ahead, Richard.
He's like me. He can't get the auto to work.
Well, Richard Jervin is on our board of directors and lives in Coeur d'Alene. And has been spending a lot of time on his boat this summer, from what I can gather.
Nice.
That's because that's what they do in Coeur d'Alene.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Why don't you? I think that's it.
Okay, perfect. Well, returning citizens program for St. Vincent de Paul, as Roger said, the ICARE program is a part of St. Vincent de Paul, one of the largest social service agencies in North Idaho. And our former director, about a year, almost 2 years ago now, went down to Boise, to the southern Idaho, St. Vincent de Paul, and talked to the coordinator of the reentry program in Boise, because you have a very robust reentry program in Boise. And that person said, you know, St. Vincent de Paul National has money to help programs, St. Vincent de Paul programs, start reentry programs. So he came back up and said, you know, I want to start this, and I know the perfect person to coordinate. That person was a staff member, St. Vincent de Paul. His name was Matt Robinson, and he was our maintenance foreman. So why not take a maintenance guy and turn him into a social service guy? Because that's just the perfect thing to do, right? So the reason he had picked Matt was because Matt was a felon. He had served time starting at the age of 14 in California, juvenile detention center, and then got out and did pretty well for a while, worked in ships or something, and then just fell back into the wrong crowd, drugs, other things, and he robbed banks. So he went to federal prisons in Kansas and California, all over the place, and he was in and out of prison until he came to North Idaho from California, because he knew he had to get away from that life 7 years ago. And he came to the Port of Hope, directed him to St. Vincent de Paul for his community service. And so he came to St. Vincent de Paul to do community service, sorting through clothes. And, you know, the director at the store said, well, this is a really hardworking guy. I'm going to hire him. So she did. And so he started working in the store. And pretty soon they realized he had more skills. And so housing maintenance said, well, we want him over in maintenance. So that's how he started at maintenance, and he moved up to foreman. But he always had it in his heart to help felons, because he knew from 14 years old to he was like 38 at that time, you know, what a tough road it was to come back. I mean, he literally got to Port of Hope with the clothes on his back, and found his way to St. Vincent de Paul, and we gave him some more clothes. So he was the perfect person to start this program. Well, as you all know, you need money to start a program. So we inquired with the National St. Vincent de Paul. Long story short, found out that the program in Boise was actually a pilot program for, I think, 7 sites in the United States. And so there was no money, so to speak, for reentry. So then we had to find our own money. And this was about November 2018. And so I said, oh, well, you know, I bet a lot of these felons are parents, which later we found out 79% of the people we served were parents. Let's write a grant to Idaho Children's Trust Fund for some parenting classes, because that's what we do. So I wrote a grant to ICTF, proposing that I think we provide 3, I think they were 22-week classes. It was a lot of classes. You know, if any of you write grants, you often overdo. You're like, we can do this and we can get 200 people. And then reality sets in. But using the nurturing parenting curriculum, because we have lots of nurturing parenting facilitators, using the Stewards of Children supplemental curriculum, the 3 short 1-hour curriculums. And then because that prior summer, we had someone take the strong curriculum. We had a strong facilitator. So slipping in that strong protective factor stuff once a month in these groups, we just thought that would be a perfect combination of all these programs that we could help these parents. And in the meantime, we also wrote a grant to Women's Gift Alliance, which is a large philanthropic organization in North Idaho, which is for women, and they fund various social services agencies. Usually they fund one big grant a year for $25,000 and then little grants. Well, we wrote that grant. We got that grant, which was June of 2019, and that was the year grant. And then we had some other funding, and we had a fundraiser. So we had a little bit of money to start this project. And so the project was supposed to start in February 2020. But then we had a change of leadership at St. Vincent de Paul. So here we had some money, we had a coordinator, and then no leader to say, yes, continue, because we do have a board of directors, and they had to be behind us as well. So it kind of got stalled for a little while, but that was a good thing, because we also, we needed the people. Sure, 200 people a month come to Kootenai County from prisons down in Boise, because we don't have a prison up here. We have jail. And they come back here, but how do we get those people? They're not walking into our doors. We work at what's called a help center. So it's a big building that has multitude of social service services in it, but people aren't just coming in and walking in and, oh, I'm a returning citizen and I help. They're just not going to do that. So we had to figure out, well, who can we work with to get people? And Matt had been talking to Tim Lay, who is Department of Corrections head, and he had been talking to our local probation and parole supervisor, Brandon. So we got that connection going, and they were all on board, because they knew that when people come back here, what they had seen is that they did not have support. And so there was a high recidivism rate, violating probation or parole all the time. And so our jail was becoming overcrowded. And so, as we all know, if you have, the more support you have, the more successful you're going to be. And then we had another staff member, Amber Lee, who happened to be a felon. She was our shelter manager, emergency shelter manager. And while her crimes were in Oregon, when she came up to Idaho with the interstate compact, she was assigned a probation officer in Idaho. And she had recently gotten off probation, and she had a great relationship with her probation officer. So she called her up and said, hey, do you want to be a part of this program too? And that's all it is. It's connections. I don't know the probation people. I don't know any of these people. But I do know a misdemeanor probation person. So we called her up and, hey, you want to be a part of this? And then we had a third person involved in this at the beginning, Scott, who was a maintenance guy for us. So now we got two maintenance guys who are now social service guys. So you can see how that would work. And his crimes were in Kootenai County. So he knew everyone. And so he was able to connect us to churches, because when he got out of prison, that's where he went, to churches in Kootenai County, Lake City Church, Heritage Health. He was able to connect us with a lot of people as well. So that's how we got started. And like I said, 200 people a month come out of prison, and they have to go back to their home county, and their 200 people, their home county is Kootenai County. So even though they've been in Boise for 5 years, they come back to Kootenai County. And we had been working with the jail off and on for many years. We had taught parenting classes there about 5 years ago, And then they had a remodel, so we had to stop. Then they had a change in leadership. So actually for the past 2 years, we've been trying to get back into the jail. And I hope in the next few months we'll be able to. Another thing about being a felon and such, so Matt and Scott went to the jail and filled out the paperwork to be able to provide classes to the inmates there. You know, the background check, you know, what your crimes are. Scott says he had 9 pages of crimes he had to put down, you know, just all sorts of things. So they were denied. You know, it makes sense. They're just not going to let you come into the jail and teach people if you have this background. So that's really telling, and it helped us, those of us staff members who like, what? They won't let you in? Why wouldn't they let you in? Well, because I'm a felon. Oh, that's one more barrier. I see. It's something we don't think about because we don't have that history. So with the program being on pause until later in the year, we were able to start an advisory committee, which was a great thing because they were able to do what they're supposed to advise. So we had the captain of the jail, we had the probation and parole supervisor, church leader, public defender's office, a Vincent de Paul board member who had actually been a felon. His crimes were committed in California. So again, he had that perspective that he could let us know about. Misdemeanor probation officer, and then Tim Lay, Department of Corrections, he would come up when he could. So that was really, and same as Paul staff, that was really good because they guided Matt, because I was just kind of mentoring him as far as him learning how to run a program, because he had never dealt with grants before, he never dealt with budgets before, but he was in charge of the program. And he had to come up with an intake, and you know, we gave him some of our forms like confidentiality and release of information, that sort of thing. But he really had to come up with all this stuff on his own. And then based on the grants I wrote, I said, you know, we said we would do this, some home visits, the people would work on goals, and that sort of thing. So one of the initial issues that we had, because we have cubicles at the help center, and so I just said, okay, well, we have 8 cubicles. We'll just put returning citizens cubicle across from mine, and I'm in the middle of all these cubicles. I didn't think of anything of it, and my staff, they went, I don't want them, meaning returning citizens, going that far back into our area. It's like, oh, you have safety concerns. Yes, I have safety concerns. Oh, okay. To me, I didn't even think about it. So that initial bias, you know, they're felons, they're going to steal something. I don't want them around me. We had to talk through multiple times. And it was interesting, the person who had the most trouble with it, her brother had been in prison. So she probably had some personal issues with it, which I understand. So we moved the returning citizen cubicle to the first area so that the returning citizens would enter just into their cubicle and not in ICARE space. So that was the first issue we had to overcome. And then another issue was trust. Matt and Scott, and not so much Amberly, but Matt and Scott didn't trust the authorities on our advisory committee, the jail captain, the probation and parole supervisors, because they had been on the other side, and in their culture, you didn't trust authority, especially when they were telling you what to do when you're in prison. So we had to get past that as well. Luckily, the misdemeanor probation officer on our advisory committee had happened to work at St. Vincent de Paul this summer before she became a probation officer. She, Matt, and Scott and Amber Lee developed a good rapport because she was kind of doing reception at that point. And then when she became a probation officer, they're like, oh, yeah, we can trust Sam because we know her and she's listened to us for the past 4 months. So she's okay. And I'm okay if she's on our committee, and which that transferred over to the felony probation officer and the jail captain and everything. So that was a good thing. I don't know how it would have worked out if we didn't have her as that kind of liaison. And another thing about the trust, you know, we reported to probation and parole. Our returning citizens signed a release. And so if they broke their probation, we would report that to probation and parole. Or if they did not show up for their intake or their parenting class, we would report that. And initially, Matt didn't want to do that. Because of that code, being in prison, you know, you don't do that. So again, we had to get over that. You know, Matt, you're over here now, working on this side, so to speak. But eventually, we all worked really, really well together. And probation and parole started having orientations at our help center once a week, and for new parolees, probationers. And at that time is when we would go and we would explain our program, where what resources we could provide to people, and the parenting classes and the life skills classes, and the information and resources we could provide, you know, clothing vouchers, because that was really probably the number one need was clothing as far as protective factors. And then rental assistance and IDs. Many people came out of prison with no IDs, which Department of Corrections has worked on now, and I guess that's not quite a problem. Birth certificates was another thing. So we would go down and we would say, you know, these are the resources we can help you with. What we need you to do is do an intake and work with us on goals and check in with us. And if you're a parent, come to a parenting class. So it was a really good collaboration with probation and parole, because not all of them were on board. You know, it's a different thought process that we want to help our felons, not just be punitive. So it took a little while, but eventually they got all on board as far as that goes. Anybody have any questions? I know it's a lot. It's a lot. No questions? Okay, great. Okay, so as far as the parenting classes that we held, you know, it took us a little time. And the grant through ICTF started in May. And I think we started our first parenting class in July, because then Matt and Scott had to be trained in parenting. They were trained in June. Everyone else was already trained. But when Matt first came back, he did a one-on-one parenting class with a person who couldn't attend the actual groups. And I think that was really beneficial for him, because he was able to learn what he was doing and get comfortable with the curriculum, and help this woman who had teenagers. So it was a really good experience for him, so that when he was able to get into the actual group, he was much more comfortable. With the group, we held it once a week from 5:30 to 6:30 in the evening. Initially, we had it on Mondays, but then we found out that probation and parole has a mandatory meeting on Mondays. So we had to switch our group to Thursdays. And also, you know, I don't know why they didn't think of this, but there's Monday Night Football. So who's going to go to parenting when you got football? So anyways, we switched to Thursdays, and that seemed to work well. We also had tried to do a daytime class, a Thursday about 10 o'clock in the morning, but there was really no interest for that. So that's fine. But with the group, we we divided it up into protective factors, basically. So we would take child development, and with the nurturing parenting curriculum, we would go over the nurturing parenting child curriculum 1 week, and then we would talk about age appropriate expectations the next week. And then we would bring in the strong curriculum about child development the 3rd week. And then the 4th week, I would come in and do stewards of children, healthy touch for children and youth. And that would be our child development protective factor piece. And so we would continue that every 5 weeks, 5, 10, 25 weeks, basically, with the group. And we had one person who was a strong facilitator. So roughly every month, every 5 weeks, she would do a particular factor, or, resiliency, that sort of thing. And then we would also tag team. We would usually have a male and a female. So it might be Matt and Amber Lee, or Scott and Jenna, or Matt and myself, just because we wanted everyone to feel comfortable. And we did have some women in the group, and we wanted them to feel comfortable. And so that worked well. And also because they were new nurturing parenting facilitators, that way Jenna or myself, who've been doing it for a long time, could help them out when they got into a tough spot. So that did work well. A couple of things we found was, once again, we had maintenance guys. They work 7 to 4. Okay, our class is at 5:30. So often they would leave at 4, and about 5:15, we're like, well, where's Scott? He's leading group tonight. Oh, he left for the day. Oh, is he coming back? So we would have to text them and say, hey, you have group tonight. They don't necessarily like to use calendars. In their mind, why are we doing this in the evening? We're doing this in the evening because that's when people are available. They work like you work. So getting them to understand that we work when it's most convenient for our families, for the parents. We want to serve them when they can be served, and that's 5:30 at night on a Thursday. So that was a little bit of a struggle to make sure that they came back for the group, to lead the group. But eventually they figured that out. We did provide food for the groups, but most of the time that's a good motivator. For these folks, they didn't really want food, and they actually provided donuts for us. They brought donuts, said, here, have some donuts. So that was kind of interesting. One thing that we found was really beneficial was having Scott, Amberly, and Matt facilitate these groups, because they have been there. So they could really relate to what our returning citizens were going through, whereas Jenna and I didn't, so to speak, but they could understand, and they could say, yep, I remember that stage of wanting to use and not having the support and that sort of thing. And also they didn't let them get away with anything, so to speak. When another protective factor that we really focused on was social connections. And people would be talking about, well, I only know to go to this place to do something, which may have been a bar or something like that, or a park where people who use drugs hang out. And one time Scott just said, or I said, oh, well, probably that's not a good idea. And Scott just said, no, that is absolutely not a good idea. I know the people you're talking about. You don't need to hang around them. This is where you can go. So that was good, because they were very direct. And that's really oftentimes what the people needed. Another issue we did find was boundaries for our new social service people. Especially Scott, he would give you the shirt off his back. That also means that if you said you needed a pair of work shoes, he would go to the store and buy the work shoes. It's like, no, you can't do that. We have resources. We have thrift stores. You can go to the thrift store. Or I know if we put a call out, a board member will bring you a pair of shoes. You know, we as staff cannot expend our own resources to help the people. There are many other resources in the area. So getting that through to them was a process, you know, not sharing your cell phone number and having them call you at 9 o'clock at night. It took some time, but eventually we were able to get that through to them. So at the end of the year with the ICTF grant, we were able to provide 3 groups. You know, I think I said, oh, we'll serve like 100 people. We served 22, but they were 22 very engaged parents who some of them have come back to us and said, thank you very much, you know, which is always a great feeling. We all love that. And we've seen that they have progressed. Some of them are off probation now. So one was on felony and misdemeanor, and she is off probation. She has, she got her driver's license, which was one of her goals. And she now has visits with her 3-year-old daughter, where when she came out of prison, the father of the child would not let her see her 3-year-old. So she now is able to spend a lot of time with that one. And then she had another new little baby. So that is great to see that success. And another thing with the groups is seeing the relationship between the participants, because they are used to being in groups and sharing. So that wasn't really a problem. Like in some groups, I mean, they were very ready to share. Just have to steer them back sometimes. But they really help support each other, and in the way only they can. If somebody wasn't there one week, they're like, where are they? Where are they? And we checked the jail roster. Nope, they're not in jail. They're just sick. But they would talk with each other and help each other, you know, through their issues. And they had their own resources. They would know, well, go here for food, or go here for clothes, or that sort of thing. So that was really, really good to see them working together. And about the parenting too, they were just like, I tried giving my child choices, and this is how it worked, or I have a strong-willed child. And, you know, that was really, really great to see. And they did seem to take what we were talking about with parenting, and they, from what they said, were using it. So that's always a good thing too, when they do use the you know, tools you give them. One thing about the stewards of children was many of our folks had been sexually abused as children. So that was something we kind of had to tread lightly when I was doing the stewards with them. And, you know, I did get the, well, I would take care of them, you know, nobody's going to do anything to my child kind of attitude, and have to talk through that. And no, you're not going to hurt them. That's these tools, so you know what to do if someone reports to you. But it was good that we give them that information. One of the guys, he was very quiet during the stewards curriculum. And afterward, he just didn't say anything. And finally, he just said, yep, it happened to me, and I know what to do to protect my child, and I'm going to make sure my child's protected. You know, he just said, thank you. But that was okay. And again, the guys, they really did form relationships and helped each other out. And when they were struggling, you know, they just have empathy with the other people, or when they knew they were trying to con us, I guess, they would just say, no, you can't do that. That's not going to work. So that was good as well. Any questions? Again, a lot.
Ben, can you hear me? Oh, there's kind of an echo.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. On my end, it sounds awful. So if it doesn't sound awful on your end, then I guess we're okay.
Okay.
First of all, I'm thrilled. Thank you so much for using our strong book. I didn't even know that was happening. So
Yep.
it's kind of fun. We've thrown our little baby out to the world, and I'm finding out that it's being used in all sorts of different ways. I think the thing I love the most about your parenting classes that you said you had it for 22 weeks. That is amazing. One of the things I have learned, I used to do parenting classes in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it was with people who were court ordered to attend. And we tried lots of different things. And we found, most of the time, most people want an 8-week parenting class. And we just found that wasn't enough. It wasn't until we got all the way to 16 weeks. We tried 8, we tried 12. Once we got to 16 weeks, 4 full months of classes, we started to see a change in way people, because they had time to take these techniques home and practice them and come back and then try something else and come back. And so that was really, we're working right now with a group that is going to use Strong for a 8-week class. And I'm like, well, go for it. But I don't have a whole lot of hope that it's gonna be effective in only 8 weeks. So so that's really neat. So I'm glad you were able to get funding for that long of a session.
We received another grant from ICTF that started in May, right? We're in August, COVID. And so we are in our first session. Again, we started in July, and I have 3 people, yay. And right now we are meeting in person with the knowledge that we may have to go to Zoom or WebEx or something if COVID gets us worse than it already has in North Idaho. And that is a challenge that we have had. But one challenge that we had before COVID was that Matt in January left St. Vincent de Paul. Went back to maintenance. He's foreman, building apartments all over the place. So we were down our coordinator, which meant that others had to step up. So I had to become more involved. And then Amberly did more case management with the folks, and then Jenna and Scott. But then Scott became the maintenance foreman. So, he's kind of out of it. So that was a huge hit to us because he had built a really good collaborations with these people, and that was hard on all of us. But we got through that, and then COVID hit, and in March, and we were in, I think, our 7th week of a group, and so we had to stop. And we did resume in June, and so that is ongoing, still going, but that was really difficult. And the orientations with probation and parole had to stop, and they have not started again. So again, now we're back to that fundamental question: how do we get people? So luckily we have that relationship now. So we just email or call the probation officers and say, send people to us, have them call in or that kind of thing. So we're still getting people, but not like we did before. So that's frustrating, and you get a little bit defeated. This whole COVID thing, I think, has defeated everybody a little bit. But we are still plugging away and working with the folks we can get. And then, with misdemeanor probation, she also gives us people. one other thing about the misdemeanor probation person, she happens to be my daughter. So we had that little issue of, well, we don't want her probationers know that I'm her mother teaching parenting classes, because there's that conflict there, which really messed me up, because my kids are my material. You know, here I'm explaining when she was 2 years old and she called me big butthead, you know, and I can't do that anymore. So that was like, Sam, why do you do that to me? And obviously, we can't talk about anybody outside of any work scope. So, but she keeps sending them to me. So we just keep working with them. So with Matt being gone, and then in July, Amberly left. So I should have named this, you know, what do you do when 2/3 of your staff leave? How do you continue a program? But we have absolutely been continuing the program the best we can. And another thing we've done is we have brought in other staff as in kind. They're not getting paid for this, but my admin assistant put a beautiful Excel sheet together of all the services our returning citizens had received, you know, vouchers and IDs and the amount. And then our receptionist had put together the goals sheet. So what goals the people wanted to work on. And then we called them, and this was during COVID, we called them and said, you know, where are you with your goals? And the interesting thing was 60% of them said they had achieved at least one goal. And it's like, wow, that's awesome that you're able to do that, you know, with everything that's going on. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work that's being done. And then we also had 3 volunteers who worked for us as well. And they did some intakes, and that was wonderful. You know, one thing again with the maintenance guys, paperwork wasn't their strong suit. So we had to teach them how to write their notes about what they did on the intakes and what services they did. But it's just all a learning process, and it was good. It was fun to kind of coach them with that. I hope for the returning citizens that have received our services that we've been able to help them, and for them to become successful and not violate their probation or parole. And I know we've had some success stories where we helped a mom and her kids get into housing. And then the parenting, we have one guy who initially was not able to see his son, and he took our parenting class, and now he sees his son once a week. You know how wonderful that is. We helped one dad whose son's mother had been murdered. We helped them through that grieving process and gave them resources for hospice and that sort of thing. So, you know, I think we really did have done some good and continue to do some good with the people we're serving. So I think that's about all I have. Can't hear you. Now, maybe.
No,
Yeah.
can't hear anything now. Katie, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So have you had an opportunity to talk with Mark Rennick, who runs the program out of St. Vincent here? He was an intern of ours some while ago, so yeah. we do connect with him. But I wonder if, because you know, I mean, it seems like there may be some. Have you talked to him, or just Matt has talked to him?
Just Matt had talked to him. And from my understanding, the St. Vincent de Paul immersion program was a pilot when it was just a 1-year program. So I don't know if they're still receiving that funding, and there is the federal funding reentry, but that is every 2 years. So we missed this last year and it comes out next year, I think. So we probably apply for that.
I know that they're continuing their work. So, I mean, they may still be worth the effort to talk to them. Are you finding it difficult to do the programs without, someone who has the direct experience? I mean, I know that it sounds like it was a mixed bag, having people who were not trained as social workers or other type of community service workers.
Right.
So that has its downside, but but do you find? I mean, like with Alcoholics Anonymous or other kinds of programs, it's I think the most effective people are those people who've had the experience, given that others of us.
Yes, absolutely. And we still have Scott. So we still are able to access his services. Yes, we do. And then we actually have a new staff member who is a returning citizen. So we, could bring her in. Now she's not trained in anything, so she would just kind of be a resource, again, with that empathy and that sort of thing. And I can always call in Amber Lee to help out as well. But yeah, they were huge. Because like I said, they just didn't take anything from them. We're just very direct, you're not going there. You're not going to do that. You need to do this. So yeah, that was very helpful. And just the terminology that people would use that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that's what that meant. Okay. So yes, it's definitely helpful to have them with us. So
now are the same number of people coming out of prison as were coming out before? I thought even they were maybe trying to even get more people out.
Yes.
Since it's such a bad space to be in for, at this point. And
right. It really is. And right now up here, because they had some COVID cases in the jail, like they're not doing agents warrants or anything. They're not doing home visits, checking in with people. So it could get worse again. Yeah. With the support, and there could be more recidivism just because people are not being held accountable, so to speak. I mean, I know with misdemeanor probation, they're now only doing phone check-ins once a month, even coming into the office. And, when you come into the office, you can see the person and see their mannerisms. On the phone, you don't know. We'll see.
What would you say is the main thing that, I don't know, you've learned from it?
Well, what I've kind of always known is we have been serving felons returning citizens since I started 22 years ago. Thinking back, I'm thinking of my home visit families and many of them, oh yeah, I just came out of prison and all that. I'm like, oh, okay. But we didn't really do anything to help them. But I was thinking, oh, all those women, we could have had a fabulous group, to help these women. But just the timing wasn't right. I mean, I remember Janet working in the Boise Women's Prison doing Strengthening Families, 10 years ago or whatever, and always with the protective factors, thinking, oh, how cool that is, to be able to do that. And, our program obviously is a little different. We're getting them after they come out. But, returning citizens are just like me. They struggle, they have successes, just like I do. And they're just a wonderful group of people to work with. And I learn from them, about being a parent, just being a partner, just a, general citizen member. So I enjoy working with returning citizens a lot.
I had wondered, I guess now that you're saying it, it's fairly clear that you're talking about women and men, but were originally most of them women or men?
Men. And let's see, I think we're 70-30. 70% of those who come out. Yeah. Yeah. And another thing is most of the offenses, I think 55% were possession charges. So drugs or alcohol type offenses. So again, that is one concrete support. We just, restored paths is right down the street. AA, here's all the information about that, or NA. So we really encourage folks to get into programs.
And you feel like, I mean, I guess you gave a few examples, of people getting back with their kids and so on. And overall, do you feel like you were able to? I mean, that the stuff you've done has helped to tie people back together. Yes,
I do feel that way. One of the moms, the one who got to be with her 3-year-old again, the year before, that little child's dad had taken a parenting class from him. So I provided childcare for that little child who was 2 at the time. Oh boy, she was something. She ripped my name tag off. She bit me, hit me, a poor little thing, because she goes to daycare all day and then she had to come to a stranger for an hour while her dad was at parenting class. And that time her mom was in prison. So she had just a lot of trauma going on. But it was interesting because a year later I could share with the mom. I was like, oh, your little one is just fabulous. She's just so strong-willed. I love her. She didn't talk much, but I taught her a few words, and she loved her animal crackers, and the mom was talking about, she just gets into the food all the time. And I said, well, this is what I did with her last year. You might try that. And it worked. And later on she said, oh yeah, that did work, what you said to do. So that was kind of cool. You don't really have that. You don't usually get to interact with the children in the classes. Home visits you do, but not in the classes. But that was kind of fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Katie, there were a couple of notes. I don't know if you got to see them, but Sydney said, thank you for sharing your story and experience running this program. It's been great to hear about your team's work. I look forward to hearing more in the future. And Savannah Swicker said, the other SS said, thank you, Katie, for sharing. I have to get going to my next meeting. Keep up the great work. And so with that, I think we've come to the end of the time, and appreciate hearing about it. Unless anybody has any quick question, Richard or Maureen, we've kind of scaled down here.
Yeah, so, that happens. I get it.
All right. So, well, thank you, everybody. Next week, we are going to do something on, we have a marriage and family counselor who's going to do a piece around helping parents work with each other to make decisions around their kids, how they will do that. Someone asked that as a specific question, so I got somebody who could do that. So and she's British and has a lovely accent, so she's very fun to listen to. All right. Okay, bye all.
Bye. Thanks, Roger.
Yep. Thank you, Katie. See you, Richard.
See you, Richard.